And this one can be the Froggy Report. Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, over the last few weeks, I've talked about other waters, and I haven't spent so much time highlighting what's going on in the Salmon River. But we all have to realize that a great source of the economy for both Pulaski and Oswego County is that salmon and trout fishing that takes place in the Salmon River. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I recently spoke to Rocky, who's a guide on the Douglaston area and is out there on the water all the time, and he's one of my greatest resources of knowledge for this type of fishing, and I can pass on to you. And I said, Rocky, how's the fishing been? He said, well, I'm not fishing today, but I was out yesterday, and I was sort of training a couple of the guides that we're starting here in the Douglaston area. And he said they both of their clients hooked a dozen fish yesterday. They were all king salmon. And of course, when you're fishing the Salmon River, remember, folks, it isn't so much of what you catch, but what you hook and can battle. And there's a lot of steps in that battle that can allow that fish to get away. But to land them is really a special part of it. And he says each of the fishermen landed 2 or 3 or 4 fish, so that was a great success. I said, Rocky, what are they using? I said, what is the key to what they're using that's catching them the fish? He says, well, of course they're using flies, but he says, I don't think pattern is. I'm realizing this more and more every day, that the pattern isn't as important as the presentation. So what's the key to the presentation? It's making sure that you are able to let that fly float as close to the bottom as possible, because that's where these fish are going to be finding their food. And he says any egg pattern will probably be fine to use. He says color. He says some of the bright colors like chartreuse and pink and orange all work good. He says you could take 100 fishermen that are successful in this river, and they could use 100 different fly patterns, and they're probably all going to be successful. It isn't so much the color or the type of fly you're using, but he says egg imitating flies are really good, are a good choice in any of those colors. But he says it's your presentation, making sure it stays near the bottom. That's a real key point to this. And so right now the fishing is excellent. I asked him, I said, is there as many fishermen on the river this year as you figure have been there in the past? And he says, well, it's sort of hard to figure right now, but he says, I don't think there are quite as many. And he says, that's a very serious thing, because this is the key to our economy. And this is the time of year where it all happens. But he says, in his mind, there's a huge number of fish. And he says, over the last couple of days, I've started seeing eggs in the water. And he says, that's a key. So the steelhead are shortly going to be behind. They're going to be coming up here to eat these eggs and all the debris from dying salmon. So this is a real bonus time when you can catch both freshly run king salmon and steelhead in the same day. It really is every fisherman's dream. And we have it here on the Salmon River. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.